Welcome to the Arkansas Cattle Business Podcast, brought to you by the Arkansas Cattlemen's Association. Here, we dive into the heart of Arkansas's cattle industry, where legislation, education, advocacy, and development come together to support the hardworking cattle producers of the natural state. Whether you're in the pasture or on the road, this is your connection to the people, policies, and programs shaping the future of our industry. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Arkansas Cattle Business Podcast. We're glad to have you here.
Good to be here. I feel like I haven't seen you all week.
I haven't been here.
I've not been here.
We're recording this on Thursday, April the 10th, and this is the first time I have been in the office all
week.
Yeah. So if you've emailed me, I'm sorry. I'm getting back to you today as soon as I can. I have been at the Capitol along with all of your elected officials every single day this week until pretty late every night. So we've got a fairly robust, I feel like, update on the Capitol, but I don't know. It's been an interesting week. So we're still here recovering from the storms here in Central Arkansas. I feel like every time I drive to work, every day there's a little bit less water on the fields.
Yes.
And so we're seeing some positive movement, hopefully. But you've had county meetings this week.
Lots of county meetings.
Yeah.
Traveled from almost to Oklahoma and northwest Arkansas, so
Yep.
lots of miles.
Yeah, I had one county meeting. I was supposed to go to a few, but I made it to one. And so I was really glad to be able to make it out of the Marble building downtown and go to a county meeting. It's nice to be able to see our members there. So, all right. Well, let's hop in. Let's do it.
So, if y'all don't know, there's a big Hats on the Hill update today.
Is there a question mark? It feels like... Oh, I don't know. So this week at the Capitol, we've been incredibly busy. Like I mentioned, this is my first time stepping foot into the Cattlemen's building this week because I've been at the Capitol every day. Mornings start fairly early there with committee meetings, along with the fact that the legislature does in fact meet and convene at 8 a.m. and read some things across the desk and do some morning hour items. And so then you'll go into committee meetings, depending on the day, what time, and then we'll sit there and maybe have time for lunch. Sometimes it's Teddy Grahams, and sometimes you eat other people's food that they had a legislative event, and so you get to eat for free. And you'll be able to at least eat something as opposed to just Teddy Grahams and Red Bull. And so we'll go through lunch, and then they start their agendas, and each agenda this week has had within the actual chambers, not even just committees, because committees have had very large agendas as well. Each committee or each chamber had probably about 70 to 80 bills on their agenda on average. And so what they have been doing this week is that the Senate and the House would convene, they would do their morning hour and make it through a portion of the agenda, and so they'd convene about 1 or 1:30 depending on the chamber. They would go through a lot of all of their resolutions, they would make it through some of their initiating chamber bills. So if you're in the Senate, they would hear most of the Senate bills. If you're in the House, they would hear most of the House bills. And then they would adjourn immediately following the budget bills, typically, and go to their committees, so that way their committees could continue meeting, because while you have 75 bills on the House agenda or 75 bills on the Senate agenda, you have probably about 100 bills on some committee agendas. And so, especially looking at public health or education committee has had quite a few bills there in both entities, both houses and both House and Senate. And so they have been meeting for committees and then reconvening back in the Senate or the House at about 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And so I think one night this week the Senate wrapped up about 10:30, then one night the House wrapped up about 10, then they both went long last night. And so it's been a very busy week for your legislators and for people like myself that are there working on bills and legislation, especially if you're hearing an opposite chamber bill. And so because you have to stay until 9 or 10 o'clock when it gets heard. And so trying to see where it's going and talk to legislators about that bill. And so it's been a very busy week. It's been so busy because in theory, knock on some wood over here, rumor has it they adjourn next week. And so they are trying to clear the calendar every day. They are trying to start fresh every day to make sure that they can make it through and get things accomplished there at the Capitol. So it's been quite a time. And I've got a couple of bills to update you on, but it shouldn't be nearly as heavy because we haven't seen, I'm only going to update ones that we've seen some movement on.
Yep.
So.
I know you were supposed to go with me Monday to Scott County, and she called me and she's like, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it. It was like 3 o'clock, and I needed to leave by 3:30, and I was like, all right, cool. So
I warned you. I mean, they gave me a 30-minute notice.
That's true.
And I did tell you. I was like, hey, this is possible.
Yeah.
Just because we were waiting on a Senate bill on the House side, and so we were there we were actually waiting on a committee on Monday night. And so, and that committee convened at 6 o'clock, and I think their meeting in Scott County was at 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't figured out how to clone myself yet. So, but you did a great job. I actually received a text message from somebody that was there that said, hey, I wish you could have made it too, but like she did a wonderful job.
Cool.
And so it's great. They had the law enforcement there as well.
Yeah.
So
Mr. Billy Black was there and one of his officers. I can't really remember his name, so sorry. But yeah.
Yeah, so it's exciting. And so I'm glad to be able to see them out sharing their work that they're doing as well at county meetings.
Yeah. They're doing pretty good job. If y'all haven't heard about them or listened to them speak, I highly encourage y'all to. And maybe we can have them on the podcast at some point. So
yes, for sure. We'll definitely get Chief Black over here and talk about what they're doing. So if you don't know, the Agriculture Department does actually, the Department of Agriculture does actually have a law enforcement division. In the past, it really only dealt with the forestry side of things, but here recently, in the last couple of years, they've expanded to touch livestock and equipment and all of their other pieces, and so they're doing an outstanding job in getting cattle back or equipment back or money back for producers that have items stolen or things like that. And so they've been making the rounds to our county cattlemen's meetings just to talk about what they're working on and a little bit of crime prevention and what you can do to not be an outlier or not be a victim, somebody that's easy to spot, but also what to do if something does happen. So great time. Yeah, yep. We'll definitely have them on here. So, no, I appreciate you being able to fill in. I was able to go to Lincoln County Tuesday night. I did, in fact, make that one. And so...
I was in Greene County that night, so... Yeah. We've been traveling a lot, if you don't know.
Yeah, and we've only got, I think, like 4 counties left to schedule. And so we are very close to being able to visit every county within the last 2 years. And so, really, that was a big goal of mine when I started, was that I wanted to see every single county association, and so, in person. And so... very close to that. We're going to wrap it up here soon. So, excited about it. All right. Let me drink some water, and then we can jump into Hats on the Hill, I guess.
Quick commercial break when there's not actually a commercial.
Sorry. You're going to hear me drinking water. I'm trying, guys.
You have not drank water this week.
I have not. Literally. When I go to the Capitol, I try not to carry a lot of things because you have to keep up with them. And if you're there for 12 hours, you really don't want to keep up with those things for that long. And so the first couple of days I didn't take my water bottle, and I regretted that decision because I only had soda and Red Bull. I was like, okay, I need to buy some water. I need to drink water, guys.
Over-caffeinated.
Yes, I need actual water. So today I did much better. I'm trying to make sure. Got to take care of yourself. Sometimes.
Yep.
So, so we'll jump in. Hats on the Hill. What you got? What questions do you have?
What happened this week?
What are we watching? So we'll talk with the bills that have completed this week, that were finished, got across the finish line, and are headed to the governor's desk. And so, like I mentioned, there's still a lot of bills happening. Still, honestly, bills being filed, which is interesting to me because there's less than a week left of session, and so there's not going to be a lot of time to get things done. And so a lot of it is going to be what is on the calendar and what's on the agenda of committees of getting things across the finish line. And so we had 2 different bills this week that actually were completed and were sent to, or will be sent to, the governor. And so the first one is House Bill 1594, and so that was our farm ID, tax ID card that we discussed a couple episodes back, and I gave y'all an update on. So it was passed out of the House, and well, I say that, it wasn't passed out of the House. It was passed out of committee to be a tax ID card. It had a fiscal impact, and so it went back to committee. And so it passed out of the House as a $20 payment for an 8-year period. So you pay $20 one time, you get a tax ID card for 8 years, and that allows you to go to the feed store, to wherever it may be, the co-op, and buy items that are tax exempt in the state of Arkansas without having to fill out the piece of paper every single time. And so while we know we obviously probably would have preferred a fee-free card, as probably would have the sponsors and most producers out there, I think $20 for 8 years is probably the smallest fee we could have gotten. And as we talked about previously, there's not a lot moving out of this Senate revenue and tax that has a fiscal impact. And so this was a compromise we were willing to work with and willing to make sure that we had this availability to our producers. If you don't want to pay that $20 fee, that just means you won't get the tax ID card. You'll still fill out the paperwork same way you always did. And so that one passed out of the Senate this week. It was a late night for that one. It was pulled out, and so they did vote on that earlier this week, but it was probably about an 8 or 9 o'clock p.m. vote. And so it was able to get done. It'll be headed to the governor's desk. The other bill that was finished all the way through the process this week was House Bill 1740. And so if you remember, I believe we've talked about it and on a podcast recently, was an EID FOIA exemption. And so I have also learned recently, or thought about it recently, that maybe not everybody knows what FOIA is. It's the Freedom of Information Act. And so it is essentially where information that is held by the federal government, the state government, is able, a person, the citizen of Arkansas, so on the state level, a citizen of Arkansas has the right to ask for that information. It's held by the state government. It is your information. And so you're able to request that information. And so there are certain items tied to the EID tags, mainly the Certificate of Veterinary Inspection. And so we wanted to worked with the Department of Agriculture to make sure that information is protected and exempted from FOIA. And so if somebody went online and they requested this information, the Department of Agriculture would not be legally obligated to send it to them. And so they will not be sending that information. Prior to, the Department of Ag worked really hard to make sure that they maintained producers' privacy. And so they were not in the habit of sending out this information already, but this makes it where they are legally sound to not send out that information. So that one passed through. I'm really grateful for our sponsors of that bill, Representative Kendra Moore and then Senator Steve Kroll, for working on that bill. FOIA bills are usually not very fun and fairly difficult. Both of these passed out with a large majority. In the House, it passed with a 94 yay vote, and on the Senate side, it passed with I believe it was a 26 yay vote, and you have to have 18 to pass out of there. And so if it wasn't 26, it was in the upper 20s for sure. And so really, really excited about that. And so that, again, was another late night bill. I think Senator Kroll texted me about 9:30. It would have been Tuesday night, telling me that, hey, we passed it. And so really grateful for them for their work on that bill and making sure that we're able to continue protecting producers' privacy and information there. So it's really exciting. And then the update everyone is waiting for on Senate Bill 290. So if you are a member of the Cattlemen's Association or you are subscribed to our newsletter, you probably received an email this week asking you to reach out to your representative to support Senate Bill 290. So first, I want to say thank you if you did that. We're really grateful for y'all's willingness to step up and reach out to your elected officials. We've talked about it before, but it means a lot coming from a constituent, coming from someone that put them in that seat or has the ability to put them in that seat, really can make all the difference. And so if you don't know what Senate Bill 290, or if you happen to just forget, what that bill does is a permitting moratorium bill, and so it's surrounding watersheds. And so the bill itself originally was saying that the power to create a permitting moratorium, whether that's in agriculture or not, the power to create a permitting moratorium lies with the legislature, lies with the Arkansas Legislative Council or the Joint Budget Committee, depending on session or not. and as opposed to a state agency as they currently stand. The state agency has the authority to do that. And so we wanted to, from the Cattlemen's perspective, we provided testimony, we supported this bill, we were working on this bill. It feels like all of session, but probably not. But we've been working on this bill for quite a while and wanted to make sure that for us, it's a private property rights issue. It is a right to farm issue. It is making sure that the power is in the hands of the people that are elected by our Kansans. And so that bill was passed out of the Senate Ag Committee a few weeks ago, passed on the Senate floor with a 22 vote support there, and so went over to the House Ag. And so that was one of the reasons I couldn't go to Scott County, was because on Monday they did what we talked about in the beginning of the episode, which was the House gavelled in. They did their morning hour, quote unquote, even though it's like 1:30 in the afternoon. And so they started their agenda, and then once they wrapped up budget bills, they adjourned. I think actually they may have made it even a little further, but they adjourned for a recess. The technically, I guess, would be the more correct term here. Words are still hard. And so they went into a recess for committees. And so the Senate or the House Ag Committee convened about 5 or 6 o'clock on Monday afternoon, and so we had members there to testify on behalf of Senate Bill 290. Really appreciative to them for sticking around and being there to testify, especially because it did not have a specific start time. It was an upon adjournment committee meeting, which means you have to get there fairly early just in case they adjourn earlier in their agenda. And so thank you to Don Hubble from Independence Jackson counties and Travis Payne from Conway County for being willing to stick around and hang out at the Capitol with us that day and that afternoon into the evening. The committee passed that bill out. The Ag Committee passed that bill out with an 11 vote. You have to have 11 votes to get out of a committee on the House side, and so it passed it out. It was quite a bit of testimony. They did limit the testimony on each side, and so limited the amount of time the bill could be spoke about. And so it passed out of House Ag that Monday evening. I think it was probably about 6:30, 7 o'clock when they got done. And so it was headed to the House floor on Tuesday. It was on the agenda for Tuesday. It was not heard. They adjourned before they heard all of the Senate bills. I think there are about 12 or 13 bills left on the agenda. And so they did not clear the calendar, per se, which is what that is called, where they go through all the way through. And they adjourned to go to committee meetings. Again, they did not, but they did not come back this time because they'd been there until, because let me back up. After we passed that bill out of the House Ag Committee, the House members went back upstairs and went back into session, and so they were there until about 10:15 or 11 or so on Monday night. And so on Tuesday they adjourned and actually were able to leave, quote unquote, early. I think it was like 6 o'clock when they were able to leave the House and go back into committee meetings. But after wrapping up committee meetings, they did not go back into session. And so we were prepared on Wednesday to hear that. And so it was on the agenda again for Wednesday. And then Wednesday afternoon, Representative Vaught, who is the sponsor on that bill, made a motion to send it back to committee. And so it was amended this morning. Officially, this is on Thursday. You're probably not listening to this on Thursday, but it's recorded on Thursday. So on Thursday, April the 10th, it was amended to essentially say all of the same things. The legislative process that we asked for, the legislative process that we wanted to create, is still in place. It just says that the bill does not, or this rule does not apply to existing moratoriums. So if you don't know, there are 2 moratoriums in place in the state of Arkansas: the Buffalo River Watershed Hog Farm Moratorium over medium and large size hog farms, and then the Lake Maumelle Moratorium, so the drinking water for Central Arkansas. And so as we believe both fairly important moratoriums there, especially in the Central Arkansas water side. We all live in Central Arkansas and like to have clean drinking water. And so what this bill did, the amendment did, was just saying that we are leaving those 2 moratoriums, they will not go through the legislative process that this bill is creating. And so that bill then was approved as amended and passed out of the House Ag Committee meeting. They did a special called House Ag Committee meeting Thursday morning. They normally meet Monday, Wednesday. And so they did a special called House Ag meeting to essentially, they had a few bills on the agenda, but this was a big big bill on the agenda to make sure that it could go back. So now that it has been passed out of House Ag, it will go across, it'll go to the House floor on Monday. If it passes there, it will go across the Capitol to the Senate side and go through to concur that amendment, since they've already passed the bill. And so a lot of conversations around why that's happening, a lot of conversations around, is this still a win? Is this still, I will say this is what we asked for. We asked for a legislative process to be created, and this bill has created a legislative process to protect farmers going forward. And so it was, this amendment came from the governor's office and from conversations with the secretaries of Agriculture, Energy and Environment, and the Secretary of Parks and Tourism. And so making sure that we're able to protect farmers and also protect the watersheds around the Buffalo River and the Maumelle. And the Maumelle Lake. And so making sure that those are still there. And so this bill will be, like I said, it'll go back through, it'll go to the House floor, and so it is, again, a Senate bill on the House side. So it'll be later on Monday evening before it is heard, and so we are hoping that we'll be able to see some movement on this bill going forward. And so I know we've seen, I feel like, a ton of changes and a ton of updates on this bill, and so we are right at the end of session, and so it is a bill that is still a priority for the Cattlemen's. We are still out actively supporting and fighting for this bill, and it's a priority for us to get done. And now that we are working in tandem with the secretaries and with Governor Sanders, I am hopeful that we'll be able to see this bill to fruition, and so hopeful we'll be able to create this process to protect farmers against moratoriums going forward, or at least to protect farmers and create a more transparent and more open process, and putting that power in the hands of the legislature. And so, yeah, that's where we are, where we stand. It's been a lot of discussion, a lot of things. A lot of people are saying that somehow this has become the bill of the session. And so it feels like it for us, because this is one of the big ones that we've been fighting for. We've had a lot of smaller bills that are still just as important. Obviously, the EID tag protection bill, and wanting to making sure that we're able to protect producers there. The vet bills that we got done very early on in the session, and so still just as important. But this one has just been maybe a little bit more of a lengthy process, and so it feels like it's been getting a lot of attention, and it has. And so we're hoping that we'll have a good update for you next week. And so if everything were to go to plan, it would hit the Senate side. If it passes on the House side, it would hit the Senate side just in time, just prior to them adjourning, technically, if they adjourn on Wednesday. And so, as is technically planned currently. And so hopefully we'll be able to give you all a good update next week. And so, but again, we do appreciate you reaching out to your representatives. It really does mean a lot and make a difference, especially in a bill that is as controversial as this bill was, and in a bill that has a lot of misinformation surrounding it, as this bill did. I will say, just because I have to, the bill as it originally was written did not immediately remove the moratorium on the Buffalo River watershed. It did not immediately allow for hog farms in the Buffalo River. It did not immediately allow for pollution in the Buffalo River. All it did was create a process and ask everyone to follow that process. And so now all this bill does is create the process. And so we're very excited to be able to have that process, hopefully, going forward, to make sure that the legislature is involved. So, yeah, big update. Feels like a big update, but it's really just 3 bills.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye on it as we wrap up session. We do still expect to see some movement on a few bills. they are no longer, I believe, going to be hearing opposite chamber bills to be introduced. And so anything getting amended and coming back obviously will be heard. But if something just got filed this week, odds are very low that it's going to make its way through the process. But we are hopeful to see a light at the end of the tunnel for session and be able to provide a full recap for y'all here shortly. We'll have a recap in the magazine, but also we'll do a recap podcast here as well. If we see some information coming forward, I will put a plug in for our policy development process. And so we are starting that process currently. And so the way, again, as a reminder, the way the Cattlemen's takes a position on a bill or fights for a bill and supports a bill or fights against a bill is all through our legislative process and all through our policy book. And so if we have policy supporting something like we did for SB 290, we will be there. We will support that policy and we will support that legislation. If we have policy that fights a bill or is against a bill, we'll be there as well, fighting fighting against that legislation. But it's all written by and driven by our members and voted on by the entirety of our membership at convention. And so if you have something that you say, hey, I wish Cattlemen's had worked on this year, and we didn't have policy on it, bring it forth. Let us know. And so we'd love to be able to have conversations about that with our members and with our counties. And so we are only able to work on things that we have policy on. And so we are only able to fight for what our members want or fight against what our members don't want. And so making sure that you are involved and you're reading our policy book. If you go on our website and you go to the home tab and hover over it, it pops up policy and legislation. Click on it. It's got our policy book right there. If you're curious, you want to read our policy book, I'll happily email it to you so that way you can kind of see where we stand and what we have policy on and what we don't have policy on and what we might need. So bring it forth. Let us know. We'd love to be able to update and make sure that if there's an issue in your area that we haven't been able to work on or address that you want, that it's brought forth before the membership.
Yep.
So that'll be my plug. All right. That is your next to last, possibly, Hats on the Hill update. And so if they do adjourn on Wednesday, there may be called in for a special session. We still don't really know. It really kind of just depends on how much goes to the calendar. And so we will keep y'all updated. We may have a sporadic Hats on the Hill update as we move forward, or we may kind of pivot a little bit and focus a little bit more on the federal side as we're starting to see a lot more movement on the federal issues as more and more appointees are getting through the Senate, and so they're able to start working on legislation going forward. So we will see. With that, I'm going to take a drink of my water.
Commercial break.
Mm-hmm. I'm almost out. I'm trying not to be that person that's like slurping up my water because I can't stand it. It's a pet peeve of mine. And so, yeah, so we've kind of wrapped up area conferences. We covered it on the podcast last week. And so we also highlighted our membership incentives for April because we're in April and it feels like it, but it also doesn't feel like it. It's gone by. It's flown by. And so we do want to be able to highlight and announce our March membership incentive winners.
Yep.
We hadn't done that yet because if you don't know, we have to wait until all the mail comes in for March. And so sometimes that'll be a little bit later in April, just depending on the weather, depending on postmark dates. We don't want anyone to not have the chance to win something just because it came in. It was postmarked March 31st, but came in a couple of days or a week later. And so wanted to make sure that we had everything entered and making sure we had those. So we do have our March winners. So first we'll start with our prizes and then who won. Yeah,
so who sponsored the March monthly incentive? That was Michael Haney Equipment and Foreman Equipment, and they donated 8 rolls of Vermeer hay net wrap. So really thankful for them. I couldn't do this without them, but I did the math Monday. So for our March monthly winners, it was Earl Klumpler, and he won first place, and he got 4 rolls of Vermeer hay net wrap. Second place was Justin Gossett out of Clay County. He won 2 rolls, and then third place was Hunter Phelps out of Grant County, and he won 2 rolls as well. So congratulations to them. Got to call them Monday. So
yeah, and I was actually at the Lincoln County meeting with 4M was the sponsor, and so on Tuesday And so they were very excited. They're like, oh yeah. I was like, oh yeah, Mr. Earl won. And she said, oh yeah, he's already called me. And so very excited, of course, to be able to just, again, show some kind of tangible thank you to our membership recruiters. And so I will put a plug in. We talked about it last week, but for our April incentive and for the rest of our incentives, if you're curious what they are every single month, they're in your magazine. And so you can look and see who sponsors what month and what prizes are available. And so it makes it where we get to, one, thank our members and really grateful for that. But your membership recruitment really, truly does make a difference. And so especially in a month where we don't necessarily send out a renewal card or something to people's mailboxes to remind them to pay their dues, you asking them can sometimes be that moment, that spur of that reminder that they need. And so that'll be my encouragement to you. Even if it's just one member, it still can make a difference across the board, and we're grateful for the work they're able to do, and glad to be able to give out some net wrap, and especially in March, because it's crazy to think about it, but hay season will be here before we know it.
Pretty soon, in a month, basically.
So probably by the time they get their net wrap, they'll need it, and so it's exciting to be able to do that and offer that to our members. Love being able to work with our sponsors, especially those sponsors that support us throughout the years and come back every single year and like to be able to provide that benefit.
Yep, and if you're interested in a prize and want to know, like, hey, how am I doing? Like, am I even close to winning? Let me know. Call me, email me, and I can run a report and figure out where you're at. So.
Yep, and then lastly, the thing we talked about earlier in the week, and I think we talked about it last podcast episode, but I've slept a few times since then.
It was before it hit, basically.
Yeah, it's like we talked about how it was coming, and that would be the storm. And so we know that we had producers all across the state essentially affected by storms, whether that was the tornado in the middle of March in Northeast Arkansas, whether that was the tornado a week or so ago, or whether that was the record rainfall that we had over the weekend. We know it has been a tough time in the state of Arkansas in weather. We went from drought to drowning really quickly. And so we did want to let people know about the Arkansas Cattlemen's Disaster Relief Fund. And so at this time, we don't have the ability to disperse out of this fund because we do not have the funds there. And so this fund is a 501c3. It was started a few years ago and founded a few years ago, but we just have not been able to fund it. And so we want, as we have not been trying to fund it as we probably should have. Hindsight's 2020. And so we do want to start pushing this and letting people know. And so it now exists on our website where you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Cattlemen's Disaster Relief Fund. And so it'll email you a receipt. You can send that out. You can put in any amount that you have, whether you can give $5 or $500. Every single piece helps, and every single dollar of that money will go to disaster relief. And so as soon as we have the funds available that are going to be at a level that'll be beneficial to producers, we'll start dispersing out of that fund. We want to make sure that we can give more than that we want to be able to give more than $5. While we'll happily accept your $5 donation, we want to be able to give a sizable amount that makes a difference to our producers through that fund. And so that's on our website. We'll include it in the show notes. It's going to be in the email this week. It was on social media. We're putting that out pretty heavily, making sure that people even know that exists. We haven't really talked about it a lot. And so we want to be able to help our producers and our members across the board with that disaster relief fund. And so as you see fit, as you see able, if you would like to donate, if you would like to share that link, I encourage you to do that. We're really grateful for it. We have been thinking of and praying for our members that have been affected by this. We know, I mean, we saw parts of the state that had 15 inches of rain. And so it is not a great time for rain to be coming, whether you're a row crop producer or you're a cattle producer. If you got calves on the ground, it's not a great time for them, especially because I think we went from like 85 degrees to 47 degrees.
Real quick.
While 47 degrees is not cold, that swing is not great. And so we provided some tips last week of how to deal with this, but we will be hosting hopefully somebody from the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture soon on the podcast to talk about pasture recovery post-flood and what you can do as we are seeing pastures green up and water recede. What can we do to make the most of this and make sure that we didn't lose nutrients and things like that. And so it's a hard time. We know cattle producers are resilient. We've seen people come together in these times and work together to help fix fences, to help catch cattle, to help clear out barns and whatever it could be. And so we're really grateful for that. It's really inspiring to see people work together and come together in times of need. And so for sure, very, very difficult, and we're grateful for the work that y'all are willing to do to help each other out all across the state. So I don't want to end on a sad note, though.
Yeah, that was kind of sad.
Yeah, so this got sad really quickly. And so we do want to be able to talk about, I mean, after technically, maybe, possibly, after next week, we won't have legislative session. And so we will not technically have as robust of a Hats on the Hill coverage that we'll have going forward. And so I know I kind of sneak peeked, previewed the fact that we'll have somebody talk about pasture recovery post flood. I almost said post drought, but opposite here. Post flood. But what else do you want to hear about? What do you want to know? Let us know. Share it in the comments. Share it in social media, wherever you would like to tell us. But let us know what you want to talk about. One other piece on the flood and actually on the drought, both. And so because we were in a drought prior to drowning. And so there are some counties within the state of Arkansas that have been declared a disaster. They got a disaster declaration for the drought. Seems weird to be talking about a drought when we just talked about flooding. But the state of Arkansas was very dry. There were counties that received disaster declaration. And so there may be some additional funding available there through the FSA offices. And so reach out to your FSA offices and see if your county was covered there. And then also with the drought, as soon as we get the disaster declaration has been requested and will be has been approved. We're waiting on the disaster declaration of which counties are covered within the flooding. And so as soon as we have that, we'll share that with you as well. That money, certain money of certain disaster programs is exempted from Arkansas state tax. And so we'll be making sure that as soon as we have that, we know which program it's going through, and we can share with you whether that money is exempt from Arkansas state income taxes for livestock producers. And so that'll be coming soon as well. But we do, again, if you have something you want to hear about, please let us know. We really enjoy being able to just kind of talk with you, share with you what's going on. But we want to hear from you too. We want to have information going forward once we are not in legislative session, have information going forward that you want to listen to. So share with us and tell us who you want to talk to or what items you want to learn, and we'll try to get it covered.
Yep.
So we hope to see you across the county, across the state at county meetings, and hope to see you at our convention coming up soon. Crazy to think, but we are really hitting the ground running on convention and getting ready. So. We've
had vendors contact us already wanting to come and a lot of things, and we had a kind of new sponsor that I'm excited about. I won't share any details yet, but kind of tangible item you'll get when you come to convention. So
yep. We'll have information forthcoming on that as well, how to register and everything. And so really looking forward to seeing y'all again. So if we hope to see you at a county meeting, hope to see you at convention. If we can do anything for you in the meantime, let us know.
Yep. And share this podcast with your friends and family. I know a lot of people don't know about us quite yet because we're fairly new. So
yep. Share it.
Share us.
Like it. Subscribe. All the things.
All the things.
We appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah. Thank y'all. This is the Arkansas Cattle Business Podcast, your trusted source for all things cattle in the natural state.